Um, First, what we want to kind of do, just kind of check in. Did you watch the video to kind of walk through what kind of thing we're creating for stage 2?
Yes, that's true. I did, but I'm really confused though.
Yeah, it is. It's something that's very different from what a lot of folks have done before as an outline.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like giving me an idea, what you're going to do is you're going to give me a question. So this is meant to kind of help us make more and more detail as we go. So let me
Okay.
share I'll share my screen real quick.
Okay.
And then, there we go. You're going to see yourself in echo for a second.
Okay.
All right. Share. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back over to your story. Now, when we look at your story, the most influential person in my life is Esther, my roommate and best friend. I would describe her as honest, thoughtful, a good listener, optimistic, intelligent, and the most hardworking person I know. She is passionate and engaging in both social and career aspects. She tells me all sorts of things, including her expectations of me. Ooh, that's interesting. How to build a better future for us and ways to attain a fulfilling and enjoyable career. Her attributes influence me because she builds my strengths and understands my weaknesses. This is a true definition of a self-aware person. Nice. For example, she shapes my values because she teaches me the importance of integrity, self-confidence, and acknowledging the people around us. Nice. I have become the person I am today because she conveys optimism every time. She sees opportunities and possibilities that not many people do. I would describe myself as a visionary, passionate, and enterprising person. These are vital attributes, especially in facilitating my aspiration to become a successful entrepreneur. Okay, so we've got some really big things that Esther has done for you, right? So all of these things that she's kind of, I love that the phrase, including her expectations of me. That really catches me, right? So when I'm looking at that, I'm kind of thinking that's something where she had some expectations for you, but what it has kind of helped you do then is build your own set of self expectations. She's helped you become self aware.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at this, I'm kind of thinking about the themes that I see. So we have a lot of ideas here, a lot of really good information. But now we need to know kind of what the big idea is. And kind of what I mean by big ideas, this is what's going to become the main kind of theme for your whole project. And that's kind of how we're going to start to organize our questions, right? So let's do this. I'm going to share my screen again.
Okay.
Just so you know where I'm looking and what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go over now, instead of to the stage 1, I'm going to go to the stage 2 tab. So what I kind of ask you guys to practice with, and in collaborative notes to go in and kind of add maybe a little bit more detail, or think about some of the questions that your classmates asked you, and then maybe expand a little bit, and that's okay. And we want to kind of develop then what that main idea is. So in the example, I kind of talked about, okay, here's one from this story that's actually kind of similar to my own story. Um, so we want to kind of just maybe change or tweak a little, but you don't have to. We just want to make sure that we're seeing themes or the big main ideas.
Okay.
So when you look at your story, how, if you had to describe it in 1 or 2 sentences, how would you describe Esther in your life? If you had to summarize it down into 1 sentence only.
I would say she's like my mentor.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, when you say she's your mentor, what does that word mentor mean to you?
Uh, it's like some mentor is like guiding
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Keep going. Keep going.
guiding and like it's like someone who shows you the path you need to take and
Okay.
I don't know.
So she's someone who helps you see uh, what's best for you, right? She doesn't necessarily tell you you need to do this,
No,
but she
no.
helps you see that.
Yes.
Ooh, that's one big major theme So that's what we would end up doing. Now, I'm going to open up a new document. And I'll send this to you after our meeting as well.
Okay, thank you.
Again, my computer is hot and angry. It doesn't want to go. All right, let's just do this way. File. Come on, Word, you can do it. I have faith in you. I think my computer, it's about five or 6 years old at this point, so it's kind of it's a geriatric computer that I tried so hard to keep it from dying on me. Let's do this a different way because Word is cranky. Everything is cranky. Let's go back over here. All right, so I'm going to copy. Maybe I'm going to copy your story.
Okay.
Whoops. There we go. Let's try this again. Copy. And we're going to go over here, and I'm going to just kind of put this into a post real quick. And this is something that everybody will see, but it'll kind of show. Basically, we're going to kind of do some work together, and then you can kind of tweak whatever we do now later on. Okay. So we have your story. All right. Now, we want to kind of then think about the main idea that we want to add. And so it could be something like, Esther is the person who has helped me see the pathways I need to take. But as someone I consider a mentor, she has never directed me down a path, but helped me see what I want for myself. Something like that, right?
Okay, so this one, like my story, will be like the original one, right?
Yeah, so this essentially what's going to happen is your stage 1 draft, that one that you wrote yesterday, that's going to become your introduction paragraph.
Oh, okay.
Right? So then what we're writing here, and I'm going to put it in red like I did before. Okay. Red's a good. There we go. That becomes your thesis statement, right? And you know what a thesis statement is, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So no, this is something that I always want to make sure very early on is that a thesis statement is essentially the main idea of the whole paper. Okay. So what we're going to explore are ways that Esther has been that person who's shown you the best parts of yourself, essentially. So she's been your mentor. She's helped you kind of challenge yourself. She's had these expectations that you do all of these different things for yourself, right? Yes. So we want to pick up on those key phrases and sentences in your introduction to then become your themes or the big main ideas that support that thesis statement. So when a teacher's asking for a thesis statement or a topic sentence for your project, that's what they're asking you to do is summarize everything that you're trying to say. It's remember we talked about a text has to have a message and a purpose, right? Yes. So the message here is that Esther is that person who helped you figure out your own path. And the message then, or the purpose then becomes you figuring out who needs to hear a message like this. So let's talk about that now. So when you think about Esther, your best friend in your life, who do you think needs to hear a message that your best friend is the one that can help you find your path? Do you think it's people like you? Do you like your age, your background? Do you think it's older people like me?
Only people like me of my age.
Okay. So that means that you also need to think about how you express that to them. Because I know a lot of students have talked in their survey responses and their diagnostic essays about vocabulary. So we have to kind of think about, what vocabulary would you use with people who are in your own age group, your own peer group? You don't have to be very fancy. You want to have a conversation with them, right? So it's like, I'm telling you something from my heart, so I'm not going to use highly academic language because that might feel a little weird and awkward, right? So we still want to use academic approaches, and that makes it academic, but we can still use casual language and have an academic essay. So you want to think about now as we start to build up this outline now, what the themes are, how I want to express them, and what I need to tell people about those ideas. So let's go back and let's take a look at your paragraph one more time.
Okay.
All right. So, like I said, something that had jumped up to me was, you know, she tells me all sorts of things, how to build a better future for us. So she like includes herself in your future, which that's a lot of commitment, right? She definition is self-aware. Her examples shapes my values because she. All right. So I want to pick up on some keywords. So I'm going to highlight some things. Let's see if it'll let me do. So she is passionate, engaging in social and career aspects. So let's talk about her passion, because that seems to be a key part of this, right? Is, you know, she's passionate not just about herself, but about the people she cares about, right? So that seems to be a theme. Now let's go back up here, right? So we have our introduction, we have our themes. We don't have to have 4 themes. You might just have 1 or 2, and that's just fine. But we have a couple of them there. So we have at least 1 theme, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of copy this structure. Put it down here. So let's make this a little bigger so we can kind of see everything. All right, so we have this one. She is passionate and engaging in both social and career aspects. So let's put that as theme number 1. Right? Now, she shapes my values. Right? So that's a good one. Because she is equally passionate about those things, right? So I understand wholeheartedly. I am that friend to other people, so I understand. All right, shapes my values. And we can also
say she sees opportunities.
Yes, she sees opportunities, and most people do not. So that definitely leads us then talking into her helping you see seeing the opportunities that would make sense for you. Oops. Highlight those 2. All right, so now we've got our themes. Now what we want to do is, instead of having kind of like ideas down here, we want to develop some questions that help us get into more detail. So, for example, I might say, how has she developed, let me see, how has she shown her passion for social aspects? Question number 2. How has she shown her passion for career aspects? So we separate those out a little bit, right? And then we might ask a question like, how has this influenced my own passion? And it's like for fashion design, right?
Yes.
For fashion, because that's definitely both of those things in the world. So fashion is something that's both social and business. For fashion design, right? So then what we have is, okay, this transitions then into shaping my values. So we have then this question where we go into, how did she help shape my values? How did I know that this was valuable to me, oops, and not Esther? So, because remember, we have this thing, so she has never directed me down a path, but, oops, let me spell correctly, but helps me see what I want for myself. So remember, when we have that question cycle, so remember, first, we have a phenomenon, and the phenomenon is Esther, right? So then the question is, how has Esther been an influence in your life, right? So the next, the kind of that's like the big question that we have to answer for the whole project. But then we have that next set of questions, that big question that leads us into the first answer, which you gave. Your introductory paragraph is the initial response. And then we start to ask those follow-up questions after we get the thesis statement, which is the initial response, right? All right, so this is where everything has to come back to. So that second half of the question cycle, we're asking all of these questions to help support this one thesis statement in your introduction. Right. So all of the questions then that we have in that follow-up question repeated cycle, eventually we have to make sure that everything that we're asking and answering about connects back to that thesis statement. Right. So then you want to make sure, like, if you feel like you're asking way too many questions, or if you're getting off topic, you can kind of say, okay, does this help me support my thesis statement? Because if it doesn't, get rid of it. You don't need it. But what you might kind of start to see is you'll be able to start asking really detailed questions that help you get really meaningful, kind of maybe important realizations, maybe things you didn't realize before. So like even here, like you can continue asking even more questions. So like, how has she shown her, like, how does she do this in person? How does she do this with individuals? So you could, like, that follow-up cycle can go on and on and on and on. It does not have to in this outline. In this outline, you don't have to have that many. But as you're writing, you might find that you're like, okay, I still need to give a little bit more detail. What else can I tell my reader? And you can still develop more and more questions.
Okay, after these questions, I need to put more details, right?
That's what you're going to do for your rough draft. So right now, for this assignment, all I want are just questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so like with this one, you're going to completely get rid of that. You don't even have to write the conclusion yet. The things to focus on for here are making questions. And so, like, even here, how did you know that this was valid and not Esther? Why was this, like, when you're doing analysis, how and why questions can sometimes be the most useful questions to ask. Like, if we ask, like, do questions or yes or no questions, those are difficult because the answer is yes or no.
Yeah.
That does not help you expand your writing, right? So we want to make sure that we're asking kind of how and why questions, if at all possible. And sometimes it's okay to have a yes or no question. Just follow it up with how, why. Here's an example. So like with each of your answers to these questions, make sure you're giving examples, talking about memories that you've had, including conversations that you guys had together. Those are going to be really important things to put into your rough draft. So that's homework for the weekend. Yeah. So why was this important for me to learn? So these are just example questions. You can decide what questions you want for yourself. Right? But this essentially could be your post for homework. Just, you would need the questions here. So what's kind of a good idea is whatever your last question is in any section of your outline, make sure it somehow connects to the next theme. Because what that does is it automatically makes those connections, and it helps us kind of stay on track with our writing. So
Mhm.
I know that's sometimes that a lot of students talk about. I sometimes go off or I talk about something else too long, but you can always connect things.
Yes.
That's actually a good way to make sure that you haven't run on too long.
Yes.
Is that yeah? Is you if you can connect it to your next main idea. Okay.
Okay. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
No problem. All right. So I'm gonna copy this. Whoops.
Mhm.
That's what I want to do. I'm gonna copy this down here. All right. So that's your thesis. Esther is the person who's always. So I'm looking just for, if you've changed anything in your paragraph, what your themes are. You don't have to write the conclusion until you work on your actual rough draft.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all I'm looking for. And how do you feel about writing conclusions?
I think it's really like easy.
Okay.
It's kind of easy.
Yeah. The biggest trick is just, what were the big ideas from
How
each
to
of your
start it.
paragraphs? Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing is in your outline, each of those questions should give you a paragraph.
Okay.
So it's like the more questions you ask, the longer your paper is going to be. And a lot of students are like, I have to do the 5 paragraph essay. No, no, no. So in college, you can expand past the 5 paragraph essay is an amazing kind of I'd say model.
Yes.
Because you still, if you might notice, you have 3 themes. So instead of 3 paragraphs in a 5 paragraph essay, you're gonna have 3 sections, and then each of those questions in that section, those are gonna be your paragraphs for each.
Oh. Okay. Thank
So yeah,
you.
just have to remember when you get your conclusion, you're saying, okay, here's how Esther is that person, and here's what I said in my paragraphs, and just summarize. That's it. You don't have nothing new. Just kind of, or at least maybe restating something to help people have that. Ah, here's what I need to know moment.
Okay.
And then you're done with that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll do it. Thank you.
And also thank you for letting me record and sharing this with the class. So I think it might help a lot of folks a lot in their construction.
Okay. Okay. For starting, like, I need to start like we did here, right?
Yes.
With the stage 1.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And yeah, the things that I made in the example, those are just suggestions. You do what makes sense to you.
Okay.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
You're very welcome. I will
Bye.
talk to you soon. Take care.
See you. Bye.